Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of the colors. Girl Scouts, attention. Color Guard, advance. Color Guard, post the colors. Color Guard, ladies and gentlemen, the flag of your country. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody can be seated. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. My name's Mary Rice. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Bloomington. And the League of Women Voters is thrilled to be hosting this forum tonight. It's the forum for all the legislative candidates registered with the Secretary of State who cover the area of Bloomington. And every one of them was invited, and those who wished to come came, and thankfully most of them did come. So I want to thank the Girl Scouts for getting us started tonight. You did a great job. I want to thank the organizers of this event from the League of Women Voters Bloomington, Shelley Bergman and Amanda Crombie worked countless hours putting this together. Suzanne Kienitz did the graphics for this, and we have a whole lot of local league members who volunteered to make this happen. I also want to thank the City of Bloomington for the space, and I want to thank Bloomington Cable for recording this. This will be on cable TV. This will also be on YouTube and available through the city website and through the League of Women Voters website. I want to introduce Debbie McNeil, who's our moderator. She's from League of Women Voters Edina. She's an experienced moderator with extensive training, and we're looking forward to having her moderate for us. So thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Mary. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's forum. The purpose of this evening's forum is to provide an opportunity to hear Bloomington legislative candidates discuss issues that are important to you. We will try to cover as many issues as possible in the time we have. If your questions are not addressed tonight, feel free to contact the candidates directly. The views expressed in this forum will be those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. The fact that the League is sponsoring this forum does not imply the support of any candidate. All the candidates who filed for office were invited to this forum, as Mary said. Now I'd like to tell you the rules and the format for tonight's forum. The speaking order was set before the forum, and it will rotate with each question. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. A league volunteer, several league volunteers at the table in front of us here, will time the candidates' responses, and they will hold up signs to show the candidates when they have 30 seconds left, when they have 15 seconds left, and when they must stop. This forum will also have 2 lightning rounds, where candidates will be requested to answer a question either with a yes or no reply or in just 1 sentence. You audience members in the live audience here tonight are invited to write questions on the note cards that have been provided. Please hand your question to a volunteer that is wearing a league button. The moderator, I, will ask all the questions. League of Women Voters Bloomington determines which questions will be asked, and they attempt in good faith to cover the topics of interest indicated by the submitted audience questions. Now I'm going to introduce the candidates that are appearing tonight. From Senate District 49, to my left, Mike Lehman and Melissa Franzen. From Senate District 50, Melissa Halverson-Wickland. From House District 49B, Max Reimer and Paul Rosenthal. From House District 50A, Linda Slocum. For House District 50B, Andrew Carlson, and Chad Anderson. Now we will start with opening statements by the candidates, and we will go right down the line, beginning with Mike Lehman, and you each have 1 minute, and the timers will indicate to you what your time is. So, Mr. Lehman, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. Thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this on, and Debbie for moderating tonight. As indicated, I'm Mike Lehman, running here in District 49, which covers West Bloomington, Edina, and just a little bit of Eden Prairie and Minnetonka. I've been blessed to have been a member of this community all my life, and I've been in Bloomington here now for 37 years and raised my family here. I'm running on the platform of responsible spending, effective education, efficient transportation, and affordable health care. The most important out of those four right now to me is responsible spending, because everything following relates back to the spending in the budget. So it becomes very critical that we spend wisely and effectively in all those areas so that we can preserve this great state of Minnesota for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Melissa Franzen.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Thank you for the invitation and for organizing this, to the League of Women Voters and for all of the constituents who are in the audience. I appreciate taking the time to be here rather than watching the vice presidential debate. I have been humbled and really honored to serve this community for the last 4 years in the Senate. I serve on the committees of Health and Human Services, Transportation and Public Finance, and Public Safety, and on Higher Education and Workforce Development, and I served my first 2 years in the E12 committee. I've really enjoyed representing your voice in the legislature and trying to bring compromise to a lot of the issues that our state faces. I focus my agenda on agenda for families. As a small business owner, a former corporate lawyer, and also a new mother, I have brought these ideas and perspectives to the work I do every day, and have focused a lot on health and human services, where I think a bulk of the work still needs to be done for Minnesotans. And I look forward to the debate and answering the questions that would help you make an informed decision coming November.
Thank you very much. Next, Melissa Halverson Wickland.
Hi, and thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. I think it's a lot of work to organize, but I really appreciate the effort and the ability to connect with constituents before the election and have this opportunity to talk with you tonight. I am Melissa Halverson Wickland. I have grown up in Bloomington. I'm a Bloomington Public Schools graduate, as is my husband and my 2 children. I've been honored to represent both Bloomington and Richfield in the state Senate for the past 4 years. My priorities in the Senate have been to be responsive and responsive to constituent concerns and work on the issues that they care about. I have been serving on the Education Committee for the past 4 years, and also the Health, Human Services, and Housing Policy Committee. I look forward to talking with you about the issues that are important to people in Bloomington, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much. Next, Max Reimer.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. It's always fun to have a forum to discuss the issues and have a substantive conversation about what Minnesota faces. My wife Elsie and I have lived in District 49B, which is what I'm running for about 3 years now. I'm a small business owner in the digital marketing and web development business, so I build applications and websites for a living. Ultimately, what I'm running for and why I'm running is to bring some responsibility to our government. So that includes things like healthcare, things like government spending, and making sure that when we have budgetary surpluses, we do the right thing and responsibly use those to advance what the people of Bloomington, Edina, Minnetonka, and Eden Prairie want. I'm looking forward to having a conversation tonight. I'm looking forward to talking about the issues, and I think this is the second most important debate that's happening right now in our nation. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Paul Rosenthal.
Thank you, and thank you to the League for putting on this event, and I would actually say this is probably the most important one going on right now. My name is Paul Rosenthal, and I represent District 49B, which is western Bloomington, southern Edina, and portions of Minnetonka and Eden Prairie. My background is in commercial real estate in New York City, where I was the vice president of Cimarron Properties. I also built a distribution route there, servicing Tillamook products to 247 greengrocers in New York City. Came here, my wife is from Hopkins and couldn't join us tonight, unfortunately. But I sit on the Higher Ed Committee, the Public Safety Committee, and the Aging and Long-Term Committee, which is going to be, in my opinion, one of the biggest committees and challenges we face as a state.
Thank you very much. Next, Linda Slocum.
Thank you. I want to thank also the Bloomington League of Women Voters, and particularly the people who volunteered their time and used their time to put this forum together to help educate voters, because voters that are educated make good choices. I want to put rumors, number one, to rest. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who kind of knows me, and he said, well, you had a heart attack. No, I did not have a heart attack. But I did have triple bypass surgery. And I found the blockages myself. And I'm glad I did, because I had one vessel that was totally blocked, two that were partway. I did not have a heart attack, and I'm recovering well. I'm a retired middle school teacher. 7th and 8th graders are my thing. I like them. They're fun, and you never know what you're going to get. And I have to stop.
Thank you very much. Next, Andrew Carlson.
Thank you. Thank you to the League and for all these Bloomington residents for being here today. It's great to see so many familiar faces. My name is Andrew Carlson, and I'm running for Minnesota House District 50B. My wife, Kari, and I have 2 daughters that attend Bloomington Public Schools. By way of a little bit of background, I have a Master's of Business Administration from the University of St. Thomas. I'm also a Policy Fellow at the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. I'm a twice-elected Bloomington City Council member, and I also serve on the Bloomington Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Issues that have really resonated with me over the course of the last couple of years are several, and most importantly being education, transportation, and then keeping us safe, a government that keeps us safe. And what I mean by that is providing for the services that Bloomington residents value. I'm running for state representative because I believe by working together we can find solutions to these challenges and bring those ideas to the Capitol as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Chad Anderson.
Hi, my name is Chad Anderson, and I have the privilege of serving Bloomington at the Minnesota House of Representatives for District 50B. My family's roots in Bloomington go way back to the 1950s. In fact, my grandpa was a Bloomington municipal judge in the 50s before Bloomington even became a city in the 1960s. In fact, my first job was mowing the lawns at the apartment building that he built on the site of an old mink farm at 106th and Lyndale. I was born here, raised here, went to both Bloomington, Kennedy, and Normandale, and I own and operate a business here. The home where my wife and my 4 kids live is a mile from the home in which I grew up. I love our city, and I want to see it continue to be a great place to live, work, and operate a business. But as we all know, the Bloomington of today is different from the 1950s and the 1990s. And so we have to come up with good, common sense solutions to continue where we're going. And I believe that working together, we can come to a consensus that will move our city forward and our state.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go on to audience questions, and you'll each have 1 minute to answer. And now we'll mix up the order. For the first question, we'll start with Linda Slocum and then continue with Chad Anderson and Andrew Carlson. I'm just telling you that so you can kind of have it in mind, but I'll remind you. Here is the first question. Do you think the government should be able to regulate campaign spending? Linda Slocum.
I can almost do that with one answer, yes. I think it should. I think there should be guidelines. I think we need to, that PACs are considered people, I think is not right. People are people. And I think that the spending needs to be, in campaigns, needs to be transparent and clear to anyone who wants to see who's giving to that campaign.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Chad Anderson. And let me remind the candidates again that look straight at the audience as you're giving your answer so that then on the video you'll be speaking to the audience at home. Okay, next, Chad Anderson.
Yes, I think there does need to be transparency, as we can tell with different literature pieces that go out. A lot of people are confused by who's sending them out, and a lot of phone calls come my way and say, why are you doing some of the things you're doing? And I have nothing to do with that. And so To let the voters know where they're coming from is, I think, a good thing for a good informed voter.
Thank you very much. Next, Andrew Carlson.
Yes, there is too much money being spent on both sides when it comes to outside money or dark money within campaigns. We need to shine a spotlight on this. We need to put in place statutes that, at a minimum, specify who's paying for these ads. I think Bloomington voters deserve better in terms of who's paying for what and knowing where this money is coming from.
Thank you very much. Next, Paul Rosenthal, followed by Max Reimer. Do you want does anyone want the question reread, or you have it? in mind?
Sure.
Okay. Do you think the government should be able to regulate campaign spending?
I do. I spent $31,000 in my first campaign, and I had $300,000 in outside unknown money spent against me. And I feel that Citizens United was one of the worst Supreme Court decisions of my lifetime. And so if I had it my way, which I won't, every office from state rep all the way up to president would get a certain amount of money, and that is it. And if you wanted to go negative, you go negative. If you want to stay positive, like I've always done, then you stay positive.
Thank you very much. Max Reimer?
Absolutely. I think this is a tough question because ultimately what we're talking about is your free speech rights when you use your dollars in a certain way. However, I tend to agree with everybody so far. I do think that there needs to be more transparency about where money is coming from, how much money is being spent within a district. Frankly, I find it disgraceful, right, in 2014 that over $300,000 to $400,000 was spent in a House district, and then in our Senate district race, over $1 million was spent before that. I don't think that there should be that much money in a state or a local race, and I do think that we need to have more oversight into where this money is coming from.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll ask Melissa Halverson-Wicklund to answer, followed by Melissa Franzen and Mike Lehman. So, Melissa Halverson-Wicklund.
Thank you. Yes, I do believe that the government has a role in regulating spending on elections, on campaigns. I do think that not only do they have a role to play in the amount that's spent, but also in making sure that people have a clear idea or clear information on who is contributing the money, especially now when there's so many mailings going out that are from organizations where people have no visibility into who is contributing the money. So I think that needs to be improved. And then in terms of the amount of money, I think it's challenging for some people to think that they want to be a candidate when they know how much money has to be raised. It gets to be such a large amount of money, it's really intimidating, and probably some people feel that they don't have a way to enter political life.
Thank you very much. Melissa Franzen?
Thank you. I do believe a lot has been said, and I would add 3 points: transparency, limits, and disclosure. I think transparency is huge. I have my endorsements on my website. I have my literature listed on my website as I publish that. In 2012, my campaign was, my election in 2012 in the legislative race was the most expensive in all legislative races in Minnesota, and I raised a little over $100,000, and the race in itself with outside money came to be more than $1 million. And it dilutes your message as a candidate, it competes with your message, and we have limits as candidates, and I think we should also have limits from outside expenditures as well. And also because you want to hear from your candidate and not someone else, so I think it should be, there should be things in place like limits and disclosures, and I wholeheartedly believe it, and I have supported those types of reforms and will continue to do so in the state legislature.
Thank you very much. Next, Mike Lehman.
Minnesota has been blessed to be always a leader in the finance campaign laws, and I think we will continue to be that as we move forward, because when I hear the different ideas that have been bantered about tonight, I have to more or less agree with them. I would love to see an actual, I heard it spoken once, an actual limit to every candidate. Right now, we're limited, as Senator Melissa said, to about $100,000 for our campaign. I would like to see that field leveled for all candidates so that instead of having to rely on outside interests, it's simply you can raise up to this amount, or a step further, the government itself fund it. So instead of all this extra money coming into campaigns and everything, we're seeing each candidate have an equal amount of money to level the playing field, so you really just hear the issues versus some of this negative campaigning and other stuff that goes on.
Thank you very much, candidates. Now we'll go on to the second question, and for the answers, we'll start with Melissa Halverson-Wickland, followed by Mike Lehman and Melissa Franzen. Here's the second question. Is public transportation an important part of the Twin Cities region? What is your stance on the proposed Metro Orange Line and the Dan Patch Corridor? But we'll start for answers of 1 minute each with Melissa Halverson-Wickland.
Thank you. I do believe that public transportation is vitally important in our area, and continuing to grow the public transit options for our area is extremely important. I have supported the Senate's transportation proposals, where we're looking at a comprehensive solution that includes not only fixing roads and bridges, which is absolutely necessary as well, but also including funding for transit. I was a chief author of a bonding bill this year that supported funding for the Orange Line. That will have a great impact on Bloomington and Richfield, with a number of stops in Bloomington and Richfield. And I think it's vitally important that it move forward.
Thank you very much. Next, Mike Lehman.
Public transportation is important to any dense growing demographic area. I think some of our areas that are so spread out, however, lends questionable whether it'll be cost effective. The Orange Line coming from the south and into the cities is definitely something we should support. Although, if you're aware, most public transportation at the most collects 30% through the fare box, and the rest is public supported. So we do have to look at that carefully. The Dan Patch line, which I believe runs from here and it's proposed to Northfield at this time, that to me doesn't have the economic conditions that would warrant that unless the fares collected pretty much covered that, again, because of the density of the areas served.
Thank you very much. Next, Melissa Franzen.
Thank you for the question. I serve on the Transportation Public Safety Committee, so we've been dealing with these issues for the 4 years I've been working in that committee, and I support all modes of transportation. And when we talk about public transportation, that includes our roads and bridges, because we subsidize it. We pay as taxpayers for roads and bridges. As for the Twin Cities transportation infrastructure needs, we need to stop thinking about it as a metro issue. It's a statewide issue. The economic vitality of our entire state depends on good investments in transportation. So certainly Orange Line is something that deals with the rapid transit system. Commuter rail, Dan Patch, is something that we haven't been able to talk about because there's an existing gag order, but we should be able to evaluate all of our options for transportation, and also go a step further with Southwest Light Rail, which I know a lot of you in the community support. It's also part of the mix that we need to have to diversify our ways of getting people to work, getting people to their doctor's appointments, getting people to wherever they have to be. So I support a comprehensive approach of transportation.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll ask Andrew Carlson, followed by Chad Anderson and Linda Slocum, to answer question number 2.
Thank you. As a Bloomington City Council member, we see transit projects all the time. I've been a big supporter of transit-related projects ever since on the council. Everything from improvements to the 35W 494 interchange to the Bus Rapid Transit Orange Line. This Bus Rapid Transit Orange Line is a game changer for Bloomington residents. It's going to provide safe, reliable, efficient transit to those that demand it most, and that's coming from seniors and youth. So we need to get moving on that. We need to get on board with that and get that project going. I'll also say projects such as investments at the Transit Center at the Mall of America is another big one. That's the highest frequency used transit station in the entire metro transit system. So making those improvements are also going to be not only directly benefit Bloomington residents, but the entire metro. These are metro-related issues. They just happen to be in Bloomington. So we need to work collaboratively with these efforts and get these projects rolling.
Thank you very much. Next, Chad Anderson.
Yes, I think public transportation is very important. I own some rental properties in Bloomington, and I have people renting apartments based on where the bus line is. So I see it every day how getting people to work, school is important. The Orange Line, I supported that in the bonding bill, and I wish we could have passed the bonding bill. That would have given money to finish the Orange Line. Also, the bonding bill had money for that Mall of America transit station that I was the chief author. So if we could have passed that, those two things would have greatly helped Bloomington. We need to do the transit right, but yes, it needs to be a big priority for us and make sure that we can move people from place to place.
Thank you very much. Next, Linda Slocum, and followed by Max Reimer and then Paul Rosenthal. Linda Slocum next.
I think what we need to find is a long-term sustainable transportation funding mechanism. I'm not totally opposed to raising the gas tax. I think most Minnesotans would be okay with that. We are looking also at tab fees. We are looking at a variety of different mechanisms to provide sustainable money for our roads, bridges, but also for transit. I support the Orange Line totally. I support all commuter rail. I would really like to see us develop more in the metro area. We are behind other cities of like size. I also would love to see high-speed rail in the Midwest. I've been on the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Commission for a number of years, with Chicago as the hub, and then providing high-speed rail as an alternative to airplane travel throughout the Midwest. The gridlock on 494 and 35W is horrible. And she waves the stop sign at me.
Thank you very much. Next, Max Reimer.
Absolutely. So I think public transportation is a very important piece of our society today, especially for those who may feel passionately about not driving a car, which happens to be a lot of people. What we really need to analyze about these initiatives that we do, be it the Orange Line, be it the Dan Patch Corridor, we need to really take a look at what the cost benefit is to it, because what my focus is going to be on as a legislator is maintaining and improving our roads and bridges. We have commercial travel that goes through those types of transportation rail or roads, if you will. And ultimately, what we need to do is make sure that there is a return on our investment for every project that we take on. I do not like how Southwest Light Rail was rammed through, frankly. And I think we need to have a conversation about how we go about passing these types of bills.
Thank you very much. Next, Paul Rosenthal.
Thank you. Public transit is vital to our businesses, to our families, and to our state. And I do think we have to look at it as a state issue. I do support the Orange Line. I think it's going to be a game changer, as Andrew said. I also support roads and bridges. I was co-author and chief author of the 494 35W interchange, once by myself, once with Chad. And that's one of the top spots in the nation for gridlock. As far as Dan Patch goes, which not many people mentioned, there is a gag order on it, and I think it needs some analysis. It goes through the backyards of lots and lots of residents between here and Northfield, through Edina, through Bloomington, and I think the cost might be a bit extreme, but we should look at it.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for our first lightning round. I'm going to ask you a question, and I would ask you to answer yes or no. Same question for everybody. And we'll start with Andrew Carlson, followed by Chad Anderson.
How did I know that?
The question is, for everyone, so think about your answer. The question is, do you support Sunday liquor sales? Andrew Carlson?
Bloomington is becoming more and more.
Yes or no?
Oh, sorry. See?
Yeah,
That's what happens when you go first, right?
Little change,
You know?
yeah. These are not, we're going to go back to 1 minute answers, but this is this is lightning, so fast, So
Right.
yes or
And
no?
I'm not going fast, am I?
No,
At this
no,
time, I would
okay.
say no. At this time, no.
Okay, thank you. Chad Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, Paul Rosenthal and Max Reimer. Paul Rosenthal?
Yes, with the caveat that it does hurt small businesses.
Okay, I'll take the yes part of that. Max Reimer?
Yes, with no caveat.
Okay, thank you. Melissa Franzen, Mike Lehman. Melissa Franzen?
Yes.
Okay, Mike Lehman?
Yes, the majority of people are asking for it.
Okay, Melissa Halverson Wickland?
No.
Okay, Linda Slocum?
Yes, because of overwhelming constituent responses.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll go back to you're having 1 minute to answer each question, which will seem like a really long time in comparison.
Do I get
so-
to go again? Is this my chance to make up for that?
Oh, listen, it's true, you were the first person, and that's a hard position to be in, so that's fine. So here's question number 3, and the first 2 people we'll ask to answer this are Max Reimer, followed by Paul Rosenthal. Here's question number 3 for 1 minute. What is your position on criminal justice reform and restorative justice? Start with Max Reimer.
Another really tough question. Again, it gets to the heart of what is our justice system? Is our justice system something that's punitive or restorative, as Debbie mentioned? And I tend to believe that we need to believe that there is a good in people and that our justice system at the state level, in our federal prisons, that kind of thing, it does need to be reformed. I do not believe in prisons for profit. I do think that our justice system needs to revolve around making sure that we integrate people back into society. So all that to be said, I think we need to take a good hard look at what we consider criminal offenses, right? Minor drug charges should not put people in prison for years on years on years. So when I am elected to the legislature, if I am, I would like to make sure that we have bills in place and other initiatives that really reform our justice system to make it more of a restorative process and less of a punitive process.
Thank you. Next will be Paul Rosenthal, followed by Chad Anderson, and then Andrew Carlson. So next, Paul Rosenthal.
I tend to agree with Max, and we just had a study on sentencing guidelines that came out last year. I've been on the Public Safety Committee since I've been in the legislature, and there are these low-level crimes that have been committed that don't deserve the jail time that we see. When somebody is released, I think it's our responsibility to get them back into society and make them feel part of something as quickly as possible. And as I said at the last forum, I think giving people that are out on probation the right to vote is a good way to get them started feeling integrated in the community and as, people who are adding to the wealth of our community instead of being an outsider.
Thank you very much. Next, Chad Anderson.
This is a very important issue for a lot of people. I think the justice system needs to be looked at. Outdoor knocking, I would be knocking on people's doors that own and operate their own business, and would talk to them, and they would say they're not able to vote, and so they're out operating a business, paying taxes, but yet they can't vote on the people that are setting how the taxes are charged. So I think we do sit down and take a look and see how it is really affecting these people, how it is affecting their lives, and how we can go forward.
Thank you very much. Andrew Carlson?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to hear that this is a topic being brought forward because it is something that's prevalent and with us here in affecting Bloomington residents. I think we need to start by taking a step back and looking at creating an economy that works for everybody. We need to look at some of these societal issues that are causing people to commit crimes in the first place. So if we can create an economy that levels the playing field and makes it fair for everybody, I think we can get at some of the systemic issues that are driving this. I think we also need to look at, we just need to take a serious look at criminal background checks. That's another important issue I think we need to address, and hopefully we'll have more conversation around that here tonight. And we need to restore the vote. Once you've served your time, you should have your rights restored to vote.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll ask Linda Slocum, followed by Mike Lehman. Linda Slocum?
Criminal justice reform and restorative justice. I am totally opposed to for-profit prisons. The motivation there is almost, from my estimation, almost torture. And I think that that's inappropriate. We need to look at restoring and restorative justice. We need to look at our criminal justice system and say, do we really need to remove that person from society for a while? And if we do, then we have prisons. If we don't, if it's a low, dangerous kind of a crime, do they really benefit from being in prison, or are we creating career criminals? I'm very concerned with the racial disparities in prisons. I think it's a pipeline from schools to broader society. The prison pipeline for black kids, minority kids, and I think that that's completely bad. And that stop sign's going to make me crazy by the end of tonight.
Thank you very much.
Distracted.
Next, Mike Lehman.
I think we always have to be open to criminal justice reform. I know this past legislative session, there were quite a few laws changed for the drug sentencing guidelines, which was a collaboration of a lot of individuals, and I think that needs to continue. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you I'm an expert at criminal and law breaking and all that, because fortunately I haven't had that experience. However, I think we do have to get with the county attorneys, the public defenders, the criminal defense attorneys, the police and sheriff's associations, all those groups that put this drug sentencing changes in this last legislative session together, and continue that reform and then see the effect moving forward after those reforms are put into place.
Thank you. Next, Melissa Franzen.
Thank you. And during law school, I did work at the public defender's office as a law clerk, and I did get exposed to the cycle of recidivism in families. And certainly we've made some headway with reform in the criminal justice system. Last session, we did have a reform of the sentencing guidelines, and we got to certain compromises there. We're making some progress diversifying our bench and also dealing with implicit bias. I also serve on HHS, Health and Human Services, where we know that we have to support people who are coming out of prison, and we need to not only support them with training, with jobs, with housing, and we still have work to do in that arena. I have also supported youth intervention programs in my work in Public Safety Committee, where we have to also help our youth get out of truancy and give them the support they need to succeed and not have a record really guide their path, and to actually prevent that and have a prosperous future. So that's the work we've done in the legislature so far, and I'm proud of that work.
Thank you. Next, Melissa Halverson-Wickland.
Thank you. So I believe that we have been doing work to reform the criminal justice system. As was mentioned, I think the drug sentencing guidelines work that went on this session that we were passing, I think that's a start. We had too many people that are going to prison for too long for relatively minor offenses, and that has a tremendous impact on their futures and their families' futures as well. I'd like to see work continue to see if there are other changes that can be made to make things work more effectively. I'd also like to see more work done to improve the transition of people coming out of the criminal justice system into society. Today, it's an extreme barrier to people coming back to get jobs, and we did pass the law to ban the box on the job applications, but I think there's more that can be done there to help people as they transition.
Thank you very much. The next question will be a question to answer in 1 minute again. And we'll start with Melissa Halverson-Wickland, followed by Linda Slocum and Melissa Franzen. Here's the question. On public employee pensions, is it better to, 1, keep the current defined benefit program, or 2, change to a defined contribution plan? I'll reread the question. On public employee pensions, is it better to, 1, keep the current defined benefit program, or 2, change to a defined contribution plan? And we'll start with Melissa Halverson-Wickland.
Thank you. I would be supportive of the current model of defined contribution method, and I support the reforms that have been made, but I think the people that put the money into their pensions, that's money that they have earned and are contributing to it. And so to change to a different model at this point is not fair to those who have been contributing all along. It is a very difficult issue for us to face because it does require state assistance to support these pensions, and we've done a lot of that, but there's still more work that needs to be done to support pensions going forward. We were unable to we were able to come to agreement on a pension bill this year, but the governor vetoed it because it didn't fully balance the approach across the government and the people who will be drawing the pensions.
Thank you. Next, Linda Slocum.
Is this a bullet round? No, it isn't.
No, this is 1 minute answer. Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, this is a 1 minute answer.
Defined benefit programs is what I support, and I support them because promises were made to people about their pensions, and I think when promises are made, promises should be kept.
Thank you very much. Next, Melissa Franzen.
Thank you. With the lawyer hat on, I would say when you do have a contract, you want to abide and honor that contract. At the same time, we've experienced very tough economic times, and we'll continue to experience those. That's part of the history and the part of the nature of our economic system, ebbs and flows. I would certainly revisit, and we have made reforms, and I know pension plans have made reforms with those beneficiaries involved to help and make those adjustments as needed. But if you are already in a plan, and it shouldn't be completely abolished because of that, we should be able to find a way, and we have in the past. But we also have, as taxpayers, have also contributed to getting some of these plans out of the hard times. So there has to be a thorough approach and analysis of how to go about it, but it has to be fair and with the notion that a contract and a bargain was made, and it's hard to step away from that.
Thank you. Next, Mike Lehman, followed by Andrew Carlson and Chad Anderson. So, Mike Lehman.
Okay. I relate and come from a business background, and so when I look at so many private companies that have gone away from pensions and gone to defined contribution plans, and society as a whole is going to these, which in the long term I think are proving better. Plus, we as taxpayers are on the hook, if you will, for long-term defined benefit plans or pension plans as they are today. I think we have to look at the economic impact of that moving forward. So therefore, given that information, I would like to see one of two things. I would like to transition over time to a defined contribution plan, which would be fair and equitable to those already in the defined program today, or change it so that new hires become under the defined contribution plan and the existing people stay under their defined programs today.
Thank you. Next, Andrew Carlson.
Thank you. I do support the current public employee pension. Again, these are public servants have been paying into this. They're entitled to a reasonable retirement. No one goes into public service to get rich, that's for sure. We need to make sure that we're taking care of the people that are taking care of us.
Thank you very much. Next, Chad Anderson.
With issues like this, we need a lot of thoughtful consideration when you're dealing with people that have worked their whole life and then expect retirement and expect the money that's there. There's market changes and there's people that are living longer, so we also have to be we have to think about that too as well. So I think when you go into it, realizing these people are counting on this money, they have their whole life and they've kind of set up their life for that, but then also that there's market changes and different factors that would affect those payouts.
Thank you. Next, Paul Rosenthal, followed by Max Reimer. Paul Rosenthal.
Yes, I do support defined benefits. We do need to keep promises to the people that we made. That being said, even in the House of Representatives, there's two classes of people. There's those with defined benefits, and there's those that have to contribute, and I'm one of those. So I do think coming forward, it's going to be harder and harder to balance these things, and I think we should do everything we can to balance the pensions. But I do think at some point we're going to have to do something a little bit different, whether it's transitioning new people into a different package or combining several different pensions, which we have in the past to keep them stable. But certainly, I think people that are on these programs and that have been promised this, they should get it, and that's how I stand.
Thank you. Max Reimer?
You do always want to be careful when you're talking about promises and the money that people have been entitled to. It's something that I personally find it's very close to me. I have a grandmother who lives on Social Security alone. So when we talk about reforming these types of programs, you do want to be sensitive to the people who rely on that every single day. So really, I'm looking for something to disagree with Paul on here, but, I can't, because we do need to fulfill our promise to the people who have been expecting that money. But ultimately, when you take a step back and you look at a state that is $60 billion in debt, a country that's $20 trillion in debt, and these types of programs, as people live longer and as people enter retirement, a new generation enters retirement, they are something that we need to really take a hard look at. And all that to be said, I would be in favor of transitioning into a contributions type program for all public employees.
Thank you very much. Now it's time. No, I'm sorry. Now it's time for question number 5. I was going to say it was the second lightning round will be after question number 5. But this is question number 5 to be answered in 1 minute. And we'll start for this question with Chad Anderson, followed by Andrew Carlson. Here's the question. With the significant cost increases in MNsure rates and the problems the individual insurance marketplace has in Minnesota, what steps will you take to reform MNsure if you are elected? We'll start with Chad Anderson, 1 minute answers.
So I'm sitting in the parking lot today, and my cousin calls me from Roseau, and he says, I got to call a state representative, and I'm not really a state representative. He said, I'm getting dropped by my insurer, and there's only one other company that will insure me, and the nearest clinic is an hour away. He says, what do I do? And so something needs to be done. We need to look at it. MNsure has not, the promises aren't there that were supposed to be there. I think we need to start over. I don't like those phone calls from people that says I have to drive an hour to get to my clinic, and otherwise I'm going to be dropped by my provider.
Thank you very much. Next, Andrew Carlson.
Well, I'll start with the statistic that we've all heard many times, is that there are more Minnesotans now that have insurance than ever before, and that's a good thing. But with the current rate increases that we've all heard about, that's just unacceptable. We need to do something about that. MNsure is in place, though, to provide for the subsidies to bring those costs down. So let's be clear on that. Yes, it needs to be fixed. Yes, there's work that needs to be done. There was opportunities these last 2 legislative sessions to do some of that work. Nothing happened. So I'm hoping that if elected, that we can start making some progress on this.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll ask Mike Lehman, followed by Melissa Franzen.
When MNsure was enacted by the Democrats back in 2010, the promises were made that this would reduce costs as well as expand coverage for many people. The latter has been kept. It has expanded coverage for many people. But as we know, as you've heard and you're going to hear time after time tonight, and we're all experiencing it, there's been double-digit increases, and it is now in financial difficulty here in this state. So what would I do? I would actually go back to the federal health insurance marketplace, which was proposed and was an option to us. I am aware that all other 11 states that have gone on their private plan, like MNsure, have been experiencing financial difficulties and having these significant increases. We need to address that. We need to make sure people continue to be covered at a fair and equitable rate.
Thank you very much. Next, Melissa Franzen.
Thank you. The question is certainly more complex than a 1 minute answer. I serve on Health and Human Services, and I take this very issue to heart. And I would say when you're talking about healthcare reform and affordability, it's easy to say, but what does it really mean? And how do you tackle it? The way I would approach it and the way I have been approaching is by meeting with experts, by tackling issues, by looking at where we want to go as a state. MNsure is something that came out of a federal law that was enacted in Minnesota. Minnesota has been a model for many areas of healthcare, and we need to continue to have that spirit of trying to be innovative and working on these issues. We need systemic reform, and it's not going to be fixed or doomed with MNsure. That's not the answer. MNsure gave accessibility for health insurance for people. It also is a marketplace, but it didn't deal with the issue of cost. So we need to look at that. And I would say things like I did this morning, meeting with experts like Dave Durenberger was our senator for many years who worked on this issue. Look for bipartisan solutions and start tackling of where we want to go as a state. But MNsure isn't necessarily the issue of how we're going to solve affordability of healthcare.
Thank you very much. The order remaining for this question will be Linda Slocum, Max Reimer, Paul Rosenthal, and Melissa Halverson-Wicklund. You don't need to remember that. I'll remind you, but just for your information. So next, Linda Slocum.
Thank you. I want you to think back to your history lessons about Social Security. When Social Security was first brought forward, there was nothing but angst and controversy. And what they did over the course of a number of years is they made small changes. They stuck to their guns and said, we're going to provide this social and economic safety net for people that work all their lives. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do it right. We're going to make changes to Social Security to make it right. And that's what they did. And now it is the safety net that we have. And I look at MNsure about the same way. We are a model state, as Melissa said, and in what we've done with MNsure, does it need some tweaking? Oh, yeah. Is it going to need some good, strong leadership? Yes, it is. But I think we will get it right soon enough.
Thank you very much. Next, Max Reimer.
Very good. MNsure has been an unmitigated disaster. There's really no way of getting around that, to be frank with you all. We have insurers who are leaving the system. I'm hearing a lot of slow reform, et cetera, and where I would normally take that approach with a lot of these types of programs, we have insurers leaving at an alarming rate. I was just door knocking 2 weeks ago in a low-income housing building in West Bloomington. And the guy who I talked to was on a Medicaid-assisted plan. And he had even said that his plan is not the same. He's struggling. He's got to pay more out of pocket now, too. And I'm sitting here going, who is this helping? Who is this helping? And we need to keep asking that because we have run up a $300 million tab on the website alone. There have been outrageous costs associated with the website itself, and customer service has been frankly bad. So my solution would be to scrap MNsure. We need to punt to Congress, for unfortunately, and go to the federal exchange program.
Thank you very much. Next, Paul Rosenthal.
Thank you. I think it's important to understand also before MNsure, healthcare rates were skyrocketing 15-20% a year anyway. That said, I think MNsure is broken and we need to fix it. And how we do it, it's going to take bipartisan effort, something that I've been very, very successful in doing with working across the aisle. It has done some good things like covering pre-existing conditions and getting people coverage that had not ever had coverage before. But does it need work? Yes. Are these raises in premiums acceptable? Absolutely not. We need to find a way to bring them down, whether through competition, or we need to look at it thoroughly and make sure that we get it fixed now.
Thank you very much. Melissa Halverson-Wicklund.
Thank you. Yes, I think in terms of health insurance, I hear much the same when I'm out knocking on people's doors. If you're self-employed and you're trying to buy health insurance, the costs have escalated dramatically, and it's really not sustainable for family budgets. We need to look at where the source of the problems, though. The MNsure marketplace itself is not, I don't believe, the source of the problem. The source of the individual market problem is that the costs have been excessive for insurance companies. They have felt that they can't stay in that market and make money. We need to understand, what are some things we can do to mitigate that. And it's going to take the insurance companies, healthcare providers, and the legislature working together to come up with solutions that will allow us to have reasonable health insurance costs.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for lightning round number 2, our second of 2 lightning rounds. Now the rule for this round is please answer this question in 1 sentence. Okay. And in answering, we'll start with Paul Rosenthal, followed by Max Reimer. Here's the question. There will be 1 proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot in Minnesota in the general election. That proposed constitutional amendment reads as follows. Shall the Minnesota Constitution be amended to remove state lawmakers' powers to set their own salaries and instead establish an independent, citizens-only council to prescribe salaries of lawmakers? The question for you to answer in 1 sentence is, are you for or against this amendment? We'll start with Paul Rosenthal.
I am for this amendment, but I voted against it because I knew what my salary was going in, and legislators are afraid to raise their own salaries.
Thank you. Max Reimer.
Trying to formulate 1 sentence in my brain here. I am against the amendment, semicolon. We need to hold our politicians accountable.
Thank you very much. Next, Linda Slocum.
We make 31.5, is it, or 31.1? 31.1, actually 31.150 or 4, something like that. We don't run to the bank and click our heels together and go, Yahoo, I get to take a big vacation. I think I'm going to buy a new car. No. Oh, I'm doing 1 sentence.
Yes, 1 sentence.
That was a run-on sentence.
Are you for or against the amendment is the question.
I sort of believe if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Okay, thank you very much. Melissa Halverson-Wickland.
I believe that the way that this amendment is written, it's going to be up to each individual to go in and decide and read for themselves, just like I will to decide. I believe that the pay increase hasn't happened since 1999. It's very politicized, and I think it's up to each individual to decide whether they think that responsibility should be on the legislators or someone independent.
Thank you. Melissa Franzen.
Thank you. I support the amendment, and I believe we have to attract the best and the brightest to serve our state. And this is one method to achieve that, to have an attractive pay so people are inclined to do this service, but not as much to think they can make a big buck out of it either.
Thank you. Mike Lehman.
I am against the amendment because a vote for it means a pay raise for all legislatures, and I think most shouldn't be in it for the money.
Thank you. Andrew Carlson.
I'm glad this issue has been brought forward to the public and bringing attention to this. However, I do believe we do need to hold our elected officials accountable. And we can do that by I would be against this at this time.
Thank you very much. Chad Anderson.
I'm against it. This would be an unelected body that would have no accountability. And if I raise my wage, you can vote me out. So I'm against it.
Thank you very much to all of you. You're good sports to participate in these lightning rounds. We're all done with lightning rounds now. So we're going to go on to question number 6, which will be an answer in 1 minute. Here's the question, and we'll start for these answers with Mike Lehman, followed by Melissa Franzen. The question is, if elected, How will you work to involve new citizens and people of color in the electoral process? I'll call on Mike Lehman first.
It's critical all new members of our society and people of color are educated on the voting process and how to involve themselves. I think we're really seeing that in Minneapolis right now, in Phyllis's Khan's old area, because seeing as how she didn't win the primary, and what the Somali community has embraced and is trying to do down there. I think that's excellent. So I think just as part of the coming to the U.S. program and getting your U.S. citizenship, it should involve education on what all that means and how to involve yourself in the political process. So that is critical for the future. We're made up of a diversity of people this country is, and that's going to continue. And I welcome their involvement and would encourage it.
Thank you very much. Melissa Franzen?
Thank you. I've been elected for the last 4 years and have worked on this issue, frankly, on my Senate hat and with my private hat. I own a public relations and communications firm, so I literally this week we published some information from the Secretary of State, which is doing a great job to have access to information of all in different languages to communities of color. In this case, I have a Spanish publication, so I see what the work that has already been done that we've supported with our state budget to have that information accessible to communities of color and translated. So if you go to Secretary of State's website, it really has a great array of information there. But how do we get people to also feel comfortable with government when they might be coming from other parts of the world where government isn't trusted? So it's our job as elected officials to also come to those communities and talk to them and share and be present and be able to really educate folks of how government works in our country and to deal with that mistrust.
Thank you. Next, we'll ask Chad Anderson, followed by Andrew Carlson, to answer this question. Chad Anderson?
We need to make sure that new citizens and everyone is involved. That's what's so exciting to me about, especially the state capitol. We're up there, we're making decisions, and people can come to our office and give us their thoughts. I think sometimes people don't understand the process. We need to inform them. Knocking on doors and people say, my vote doesn't matter, I can't do anything. And you sit there and you say, yes, you can. You come talk to me, you come to my office. And that's what we need to get out there. St. Paul shouldn't be some faraway land and some people don't know what to do. We need to make it real for people. We need to make people excited about politics, get them excited, because we're representing a bunch of people, and I don't know everybody's stories. We need those people to get involved so we can understand their stories and make real difference and change to better Bloomington and Minnesota.
Thank you very much. Next, Andrew Carlson.
Thank you. So 40% of Bloomington kindergartners are kids of color or from a minority background. That's a lot of kindergartners. That's the future of Bloomington. And the city of Bloomington has recognized this fact and has created a plan. We have a strategic plan now in Bloomington that's been adopted. And one of our priorities is titled Diversity and Inclusion. What does that mean? That means we need to do the work. We need to have a plan, and then we need to execute that plan. And that requires community outreach from our police officers to our firefighters to the folks that work at the permit counter. Need to be trained in dealing with our citizens from different backgrounds. So this is not just a matter of going out and encouraging people to participate. We need to provide pathways in which for them to succeed, to become our future leaders, to become our next representatives, because they're the future of Bloomington. So I think it has to go beyond just encouragement and actually having a means in which to achieve those goals.
Thank you very much. Next, Max Reimer, followed by Paul Rosenthal.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure, I'd be glad to. If elected, how will you work to involve new citizens and people of color in the electoral process?
I don't think this responsibility begins with when I get elected, frankly. I think it's our responsibility as citizens to encourage the new people in our state to get involved in the process. I actually think that basic party units could be much better at this in terms of a civics education of especially our East African community in Bloomington and Edina, where we live. A lot of the East African folks are looking to get involved. They're entrepreneurial people. They want to be active in their community because they come from a community-oriented background. So I don't think there's necessarily anything special or magical that I get to do as a legislator to make this a better place. What I can do as a private citizen is reach out into these communities that I'm not normally associated with, and ultimately bring them into the fold into what this process looks like. I don't think it's something, like I said, that magically just happens when you're a legislator. So it begins with everybody in this room, including myself as a private citizen.
Thank you very much. Paul Rosenthal?
You know, I too believe this is a community issue and that we have to adopt peoples of color and work as a community to integrate them into society. I'll give you a quick example. I know it has to be really quick. My sons went to a elementary school where they spoke 27 languages at home as a first language. That provides difficulties for the school, number one, but also these parents were afraid to come to the school. So what we did is we took teachers and students into these apartment buildings, probably near you, Max, and provided homework help, citizen help, and invited these people into us and embraced them so that when they used to look at school as just a place to drop their kid off, now you walk down the halls and they're involved, they're engaged, they're helping in the classroom, and I think we need more of that.
Thank you very much. Melissa Halverson-Wickland?
Yes, I think I agree that the process needs to go on, whether we're legislators or community members. We need to be finding ways to help new Americans join the process, join the voting process, find out how to vote, how to participate. And then as a legislator, I can give an example of I have chosen to work on areas where I do get involved with new immigrant communities, and one of those has to do with language interpreting in the healthcare community. Through work on this bill, I have engaged members of many different ethnic communities, and do so through organizations that exist in government to interact with communities, but also reaching out to constituents who have concerns. And through the process of taking a bill through the legislature, I help them understand the process better, and I'll help them understand how they can participate and become more involved.
Thank you very much. Linda Slocum?
How will you work to engage new citizens, especially people of color? I believe, as many here do, and probably many out there do, that you work with community groups and schools to reach out to the diverse groups within our communities, and they are very diverse, as Representative Rosenthal stated, and make sure that the community groups offer cultural awareness and sensitivity and inclusion to make sure that the new citizens feel, and people of color, feel like they can become part of an organization instead of just telling them, pull them in and show them how to become involved without a big push from behind, because that can be a big turnoff for people. But allow them to ease in gently with some cultural awareness, and that you're looking to make it, that stop sign kills me. Make it an easy process for them to become involved.
Thank you very much. Here's the next question, and for answers, we'll start with Linda Slocum and continue with Paul Rosenthal and Max Reimer. Here's the question number 7. In the last legislative session, a gun violence restraining order bill was proposed, but it did not pass. This bill would have authorized the courts to order that guns be removed from a person's possession and temporarily prohibit the person from buying guns if the court finds that the person's dangerous behavior is likely to lead to violence. What is your position on this legislation? So these are 1-minute answers, and we'll start with Linda Slocum.
I was a co-author on the bill. And it couldn't move. It wasn't moving. And sometimes, in fact, I don't think we moved much in the way of gun bills. In fact, we did nothing. There was also a bill to that people who are convicted or threaten domestic violence could not have a gun, and I co-authored that one too. I think that we need to quit being partisan about guns and the Second Amendment. The people that wrote the Second Amendment aren't carrying assault rifles. They certainly weren't. And what we have out there today is assault rifles and killings that are random and specific. I will tell you that one of the closest kids I had in school when I was teaching 8th grade took a bullet and was killed in some gang violence. I am very much pro registering and background checks.
Thank you very much. Paul Rosenthal?
Thank you. I got a phone call today from a constituent. Apparently there was a nasty piece of literature being submitted through the community about how I want to come take your guns away. And yes, I would support this, and I would support background checks, and I would support closing the gun show loophole. I think public safety is number one, and you look around the country and we see shootings daily, whether they're in malls or schools or you name it. There are people out there that should not have guns, and there's people that should. And we need to make sure that we need to make sure that background checks are part of the solution, and we also need to, just have some common sense about this issue. Nobody's coming for your guns. Let's just be a good society and realize that, we need to keep our citizens safe, and this is one way to do it.
Thank you very much. Max Reimer?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure, I'll be glad to. In the last legislative session, a gun violence restraining order bill was proposed, but it did not pass. This bill would have authorized courts to order that guns be removed from a person's possession and temporarily prohibit the person from buying guns if the court finds that the person's dangerous behavior is likely to lead to violence. What is your position on this legislation?
As it pertains to specific legislation, we do always need to be very careful. And I say that, and I think one very interesting thing that we have to deal with as legislators, and the interesting challenge that we have, is trying to legislate not void of emotion, but taking into account all the facts. So when we talk about specific gun legislation, we need to look at it through the lens of we do have a Second Amendment. That does guarantee us the right to bear arms. And when we look at specific legislation, there's oftentimes things, especially in a bill like this, that has a slippery slope type of element to it. So I would need to take a specific look at the different types of legislation that we're proposing and look at it through the lens that we were guaranteed that right. And to say that we have certain guns today that weren't there when the First Amendment or the Second Amendment was written, it's kind of like saying the First Amendment only applies to the printing press. So we do really need to take a look at it through the scope of we have this right, it was guaranteed by our founding fathers.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll ask Chad Anderson, followed by Andrew Carlson, to answer this question. Chad Anderson.
I love discussions at the Capitol, and this definitely needs a good discussion. We've talked about up here without having a stance one way or the other. We need to get results. We need common sense solutions that will get results. We need to keep people safe. We need to keep the guns out of the hands of the criminals. And part of the conversation is we have to respect the rights of the law-abiding citizens. And in terms of the courts, giving the power to the courts, I'm just wondering if there's any profiling that goes on with that, leaving it up to there. So I think it's something that definitely needs to be talked about. It's not, there needs to be some solutions. There needs to be good conversations. And I'm ready, willing, and able to have those conversations without any preconceived notions to get down and keep people safe.
Thank you very much. Andrew Carlson next.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very much in favor of common sense gun reform. I think Secretary Clinton said it best, where I don't want to take away your guns, I just want to keep you safe. And criminal background checks are the best way to keep the hands out of criminals and to keep people safe. So these types of common sense measures, I think, need to be brought out, not only discussed within our leaders and our elected officials, but we need to start having community conversations around this too. The vast majority of the poll after poll shows that people are in favor of common sense gun laws. I mean, if you're a landlord, you would do a background check on a tenant. Wouldn't it make sense to do a background check on someone looking to buy a gun? So these are things, conversations that we just really need to make some serious progress on quickly, because a lot of people are being negatively impacted by guns.
Thank you very much. Next, Melissa Halverson-Wicklund.
Thank you. I think that we definitely need to be taking a look at ways to reduce gun violence. It needs to happen in different avenues. This particular bill that was referenced, I don't believe it came before us in the full Senate, and I would, in general, it sounds like an approach that's definitely worthy of examination. If someone is possibly seems predisposed to be violent, I think it is a possible solution is to look at, restricting them from having a gun in their residence or on their person. We did pass a bill that addressed domestic violence and people who had been accused of domestic violence crimes not being able to have weapons, and I believe that was a good approach, and I would support if this is a similar model to that. I think it's worth looking at.
Thank you. Melissa Franzen.
Thank you. Without having the language of the bill in front of me, I will say this. I also support common sense when it comes to issues of gun violence. And if someone's on a no-fly list, I would assume because they're not safe, they shouldn't be able to access a gun. I do believe that we should protect lawful owners and people who use for recreational use, hunters and so forth. It's a big pride of Minnesotans and our heritage here. But assault rifles should be reserved for the military. And I would look at each bill on its case by case and really understand what can we do to keep our families and kids safe.
Thank you. Mike Lehman.
It's obvious the majority of constituents in this area want reasonable gun control laws. I do not know, as Melissa just said, the specific language of this bill, and I'm assuming from Representative Slocum's comments, this probably never made it out of committee. That being said, the way this was read, and it was read twice, and we could even have you read it a third time. No, that's okay, I'm not having you do that. But it was a very specific and a very reasonable limitation on someone who could be a very significant threat in their community. Written the way it was and being as specific as it was, I would support legislation to that end.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for closing statements for 1 minute each, and we'll start with Melissa Franzen, followed by Mike Lehman. Melissa Franzen.
Thank you again for being here. I want to take a minute or a quick second to thank the Girl Scouts. I was a Girl Scout for 12 years, and I used to do that color ceremony. So, and I do have my Girl Scout memorabilia here too. So, just wanted to share that because the work I'm doing at the legislature is about families. It's about early childhood education all the way to the workforce and how can we make a better state. I focus my time on issues of health and human services, transportation, education, early childhood scholarships, and I want to continue to represent you so I can continue to be effective on some of the issues we haven't even discussed today. Affordable child care, affordable early childhood education, paid family leave, all these issues that impact our families on a daily basis, and that we have to reform and change the way we do business because it's good for our state. So I want your trust, and I ask for your support in your vote November 8th so I can continue to do the work that I feel I have been pretty effective in my last 4 years, and I wouldn't be wanting to re-up my 4-year term if I didn't think I can accomplish something on your behalf. So thank you for your trust.
Thank you. Mike Lehman.
There are a lot of issues that haven't been covered tonight. And one of the reasons I'm running, as I mentioned earlier, is responsible spending. I'm concerned for the future of this state, and I want to preserve the future for not only all of you out here today, but for our children and our grandchildren. And what I'm getting at is we are the fourth highest taxed state in the nation, and yet we are now ranked from a business standpoint as the 47th least friendly business state to do business with, I mean. And so the two are in opposition if you think about that. If 46 states are more business friendlier than ours, then where are these new businesses going to locate or relocate to? In knocking on the doors, it has been very evident that we are seeing a migration of the wealthier and eroding our tax base through business is moving away. And if we don't get that back in line and encourage strong business growth, which is the economic engine for a successful community and state, I am concerned for the future. And so responsible spending and encouraging economic growth through strong business development is critical to this state.
Thank you. Melissa Halverson-Wickland.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you to the League for organizing this event tonight and having such great volunteers to do all the timing for us, and especially to you, Debbie, moderating tonight. I appreciate being able to talk about some of the issues that are facing the state. We certainly haven't gone into great depth on all of them. I'm running to continue to work for the constituents here in Bloomington and in Richfield on the issues that are really important to us. How do we keep our educational system strong? How do we best serve our students so that they can be graduating with being career and college ready and ready to enter the workforce? These are some of the things that I feel that we have addressed partly in the last 4 years and increasing funding and policy changes, but I'd like to continue, and I certainly hope that you'll contact me if you have any questions, and I hope that I earn your vote again in November.
Thank you. Paul Rosenthal.
Well, thank you to the League, and thank you to everybody who came tonight. It's an interesting debate, but unfortunately a minute is not a lot of time. And, I believe in working across the aisle. I have from day one, and that's how I'm known in the legislature. The vast majority of my bills have Republican legislators on them, and I do the same for them, so it gets us working together from the start. And I truly believe that we have to work together or we will remain in this gridlock that gets us absolutely nowhere. As far as business goes, I don't know where Mike got his information, but Forbes actually ranked us as one of the top places to do business in the country. And we have one business in Bloomington called Quality Bike Parts. They employ 500 people here. They were doing manufacturing overseas. They just brought all of it back because they didn't have the quality control. So I think we've got to look at quality of life for families and things to do for families and other things that make businesses want to locate here.
Thank you. Max Reimer.
Very good. Well, thank you to the League for hosting this event, and thank you to the Girl Scouts. They do great work, and I'm a big Samoa's fan. So, I'm in the web and software development business. So I'm constantly solving problems for business owners, for my clients, and I'm looking to take a lot of that same initiative to the state capitol. One thing I wish we would have talked about a little bit more was the achievement gap in our state. There's some real issues that we have. And I'm looking to hopefully bring some better solutions to these issues, because one of my passions, my personal passions in life, is people empowerment. Letting people know that they are valued, that they have the power to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. And I'm looking to get involved in the state legislature come November because I want to help people. So you can visit my website, maxforhouse.com, and I'm looking forward to hopefully receiving your vote November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Slocum.
Thank you. I want to again thank the League for doing this tonight. It's been, I think, interesting. And I've had a really good time. I've been honored to serve with some of these people, and I've represented Richfield and Bloomington for the last 10 years, and it's been eye-opening. I serve on the Commerce Committee, the Taxes Committee, and K-12 Ed Finance. Education's where my heart lies. I guess I should say lives rather than lies. It represents half the state budget. So it's a big chunk of what your tax dollars pay for. I chief authored the charter school reform bill, which, love it or hate it, it made your tax money more accountable in education. And I think it's expanded educational choice in the public school system for a lot of people. I also did the recovery schools, and I'm going to finish this sentence. I dislike factory schools, and I think that the alternatives are where we need to be. I think schools should fit kids, not kids fit schools.
Thank you. Chad Anderson?
Thanks again to everybody that have come tonight and for everybody that have set this up. I know it takes a lot of work to do that. I am the third generation of my family to live in Bloomington, and currently there's 4 generations of my family in my district. So Bloomington is a big part of who I am. I've lived here most of my life. And I'm a realtor, and I own some rental properties here in Bloomington. So I'm on the ground every day, walking the streets, talking with the people that live at the apartments, why people would move to Bloomington. So I see the issues that are facing people of Bloomington. And I want to continue to be Bloomington's voice at the state capitol. I want to be able to sit down at the table with all parties to figure out common sense solutions for everything. We can't go into a committee meeting or something else with these preconceived notions of what right and what wrong is. We have to go and listen to the testimony of the people in the committee meetings and talk to everybody that's at the table to come up with the solutions that are facing the state and our city.
Thank you. Andrew Carlson.
Thanks, and again, thanks to the League and all of you that are here today. Thanks for joining us and hearing our this pretty enlightening conversation. If I'm elected to the State House, I want to focus on the needs of all Minnesotans, whether it's investing in education, fixing roads and bridges, or reforming our state government. As a father with 2 daughters in Bloomington Public Schools, I know firsthand the importance of a quality education. It opens doors. It opens doors to a good job and a high quality of life. I also know that our infrastructure is in desperate need of repair. We need to pass a bonding bill. We need to get that done. We need to get that done in the next 30 days of the next session. We need to start moving forward on these things and quit this bipartisan gridlock. I believe with my inclusionary approach to problem solving, I can be a factor in bringing that forward. The gridlock that has persisted over the last several years has not achieved much. We need to find leaders, elect leaders that are going to address these very important issues and find solutions that benefit Minnesotans.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for participating tonight. Thanks to the League of Women Voters Bloomington for sponsoring the forum. This forum was video recorded, and you can watch it again on the League of Women Voters Bloomington website, on YouTube, and it will also be broadcast on Bloomington Cable TV. Thank you, audience, for coming tonight and participating in the forum. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 8th. Good evening.